For more than 1,000 years, they believed it was impossible. The city had survived storms of history that erased empires from the map. It had watched barbarian armies break against its walls, crusaders fail at its gates, and rival civilizations rise and fall beyond the horizon. Constantinople was not just a city, it was Rome's last heartbeat. And yet in the early morning hours of May 29, 1453, as firelight flickered against ancient stone and cannon smoke choked the air, that belief finally died. What fell that day was not only a capital, but an age. To understand why Constantinople mattered, we must return to its beginning. In the year 330, Emperor Constantine the Great chose this narrow point between Europe and Asia to build a new imperial capital. From the start, Constantinople was designed to endure. It sat astride vital trade routes, commanding the Bosporus and the flow of goods between east and west. Its streets gleamed with marble. Its churches towered over the skyline. Its harbors brimmed with ships carrying silk, spices, and grain from across the known world. When Rome fell in the west, Constantinople endured in the east. Here, Roman law survived. Greek philosophy was preserved. Christian theology matured. While much of Europe fragmented into feudal kingdoms, Constantinople remained a living empire, bureaucratic, educated, and wealthy. And protecting it all stood the Theodosian Walls. Triple-layered, towered, reinforced. For centuries, they had never been breached. But walls, no matter how mighty, cannot protect an empire already fading from within. By the 15th century, the Byzantine Empire was no longer a superpower. Its provinces had been lost piece by piece, to crusaders, to rival states, to Turkish warlords who slowly tightened their grip around the city. Constantinople itself had shrunk. Entire districts lay abandoned. Fields inside the walls returned to farmland. The treasury was empty. The population was small. The army was a shadow of its former self. Worse still, the empire stood isolated. Centuries of religious division had poisoned relations with Western Europe. Appeals for help were tangled in debates over church unity. Aid came slowly, reluctantly, or not at all. The city still looked eternal, but it was fragile. And outside its walls, a new empire was ready to finish what history had begun. Mehmed II was only 21 years old, but he carried the ambition of emperors. Educated in languages, philosophy, and history, Mehmed believed deeply in destiny. He studied the sieges of Constantinople that had failed before him. He examined its walls, its harbors, its terrain. To him, Constantinople was not merely a prize. It was the key to legitimacy. Whoever ruled the city ruled the crossroads of civilization. Unlike previous attackers, Mehmed had something they lacked: gunpowder. He hired master engineers to cast enormous bronze cannons, weapons capable of shattering stone walls that had stood for 1,000 years. Some were so massive they required teams of oxen to move and hours to reload. This was not just a siege, it was the collision of medieval fortification with early modern warfare. Inside the city stood Constantine XI Palaiologos. He was not a conqueror or a grand reformer. He was a man burdened by history, the last emperor of Rome, ruling an empire already half dead. Constantine understood the reality of his position. He knew relief was unlikely. He knew the numbers were against him. But abandoning the city was unthinkable. He ordered the walls repaired as best they could be. He stretched a massive iron chain across the Golden Horn to block enemy ships. He placed his greatest hope in a small force of experienced foreign soldiers, including Genoese mercenaries led by Giovanni Giustiniani. Altogether, fewer than 7,000 men would defend a city against an army, perhaps 15 times their size. Still, Constantine chose resistance. On April 6, 1453, the ground shook. Ottoman cannons opened fire, hurling stones shot into walls that had repelled armies since antiquity. Towers cracked. Dust filled the air. Each impact echoed like thunder across the city. But the walls did not fall easily. Every night, Byzantine defenders rushed to repair the damage, shoveling earth, stacking timber, rebuilding under torchlight, while cannons waited to fire again at dawn. The siege became a battle of endurance. Mehmed pressed from every angle. When his fleet failed to break into the Golden Horn, he ordered an extraordinary maneuver. Ships dragged over land on greased logs, launched behind the city's defenses. Constantinople was now encircled. There would be no escape. Inside the city, morale wavered. Food ran low. Sleep became rare. Churches filled with prayers and processions. Ancient prophecies resurfaced. Stories that Constantinople would fall only when certain signs appeared. On May 22nd, the moon darkened in a lunar eclipse. To many, it felt like a final omen, yet still the defenders held. Justiniani directed repairs. Constantine walked the walls, speaking to soldiers, sharing their danger. For weeks, the city endured beneath relentless bombardment. But Mehmed was patient, and he was waiting for the moment when resistance would finally crack. Before dawn on May 29th, the attack began. Ottoman forces surged forward in waves. First came irregular troops meant to exhaust the defenders, then disciplined infantry. Finally, the Janissaries advanced. Elite soldiers trained for this moment. The fighting was brutal and chaotic. At a critical point, Giovanni Giustiniani was wounded and carried from the walls. His absence spread panic. Exhausted defenders faltered. Command broke down. Then amid the confusion, a small breach was exploited. Ottoman soldiers poured into the city. Constantine XI refused to flee. Tradition holds that he cast aside his imperial symbols and charged into the fighting, dying as a soldier among soldiers. By midday, Constantinople had fallen. Rome was gone. For 3 days, the city was given over to plunder. Churches were looted, homes burned. Thousands were killed or enslaved. Centuries of accumulated wealth vanished in hours. Hagia Sophia, the greatest church in Christendom, was converted into a mosque. Yet Mehmed II did not destroy the city. He claimed it. Constantinople became Istanbul, the capital of a rising empire. He ordered rebuilding, resettlement, and restoration. The city would live on, but as something new. The fall of Constantinople sent tremors across Europe. Greek scholars fled west, carrying ancient texts with them. Their knowledge helped ignite the Renaissance. Trade routes to Asia fell under Ottoman control, pushing Europeans to search for new paths, fueling the age of exploration. Gunpowder warfare rendered old castles obsolete. Medieval Europe began to fade. One city's fall helped usher in the modern world. Constantinople fell, but history did not end. Empires collapsed. Cultures transformed. Ideas traveled farther than armies ever could. The fall of Constantinople reminds us that no wall is eternal, no empire immune to change. But it also reminds us that endings create beginnings, often in ways no one can predict. The echoes of that day would shape the next 500 years of history. If you enjoy immersive stories about the moments that change our world, subscribe for more journeys into the past and the forgotten empires that still shape our present. History is not just what happened, it is what endured.